The world knew Marilyn Monroe as a blonde bombshell, but behind the smile was a woman few truly understood. When you hear the name Marilyn Monroe, what comes to mind? The flowing white dress, the breathy voice, the dazzling smile that lit up movie screens around the world. For decades, Marilyn Monroe has been remembered as the ultimate symbol of beauty, glamour, and Hollywood fantasy. She was adored by millions, photographed endlessly, and placed on a pedestal that very few women in history have ever reached. But here's the truth most people never stop to ask. Who was Marilyn Monroe when the cameras were off? Behind the carefully crafted image of a dumb blonde was a woman full of contradictions. A woman who was celebrated for her beauty, yet deeply insecure about her worth. A woman who was seen as fragile and naive, yet was far more intelligent and self-aware than Hollywood ever wanted the public to know. A woman surrounded by fame, attention, and desire, yet painfully lonely. And that's why, decades after her death, Marilyn Monroe still fascinates us. She represents more than old Hollywood glamour. Some of these facts may surprise you. Some may challenge what you think you already know. And some may completely change the way you see Marilyn Monroe forever. In this video, we're going to explore 10 lesser-known truths about Marilyn Monroe's life, secrets that were hidden behind studio publicity, misunderstood by the media, or ignored because they didn't fit the fantasy Hollywood wanted to sell. We'll talk about the side of Marilyn that was deeply intellectual, the painful childhood that shaped her adulthood, how she carefully created the Marilyn Monroe persona and the toll it took on her, and the quiet struggles she faced while the world applauded her from afar. This isn't the story of a perfect icon. It's the story of a real woman, flawed, brilliant, vulnerable, and human. So as you watch, I invite you to look beyond the blonde hair and red lipstick. Look beyond the photographs and famous quotes, and try to meet the woman who existed underneath it all. Because the real secret about Marilyn Monroe isn't how she lived in the spotlight. It's how much of her life was spent feeling unseen. Let's begin. Secret number 1. Marilyn Monroe was highly intelligent and well-read. For decades, the world accepted a lie about Marilyn Monroe. She was presented as the ultimate dumb blonde, beautiful, playful, and intellectually empty. Hollywood repeated that image until it became fact in the public imagination. But it was never true. Behind the scenes, Marilyn Monroe was intelligent, reflective, and deeply curious. Although no official IQ test was ever released, biographers and people close to her consistently described her intelligence as above average. More importantly, her private life revealed what Hollywood tried to hide. At the time of her death, Marilyn owned over 400 books. Not for decoration, not for publicity, but for reading. Her personal library included philosophy, psychology, poetry. She read Fyodor Dostoevsky, whose work explores guilt, suffering, and morality. She studied Sigmund Freud, trying to understand trauma and the unconscious mind. And she admired James Joyce, an author many people find too difficult to finish. Marilyn didn't read to look smart. She read to understand herself. Photographers and crew members often recalled seeing her reading quietly on movie sets between takes. While others joked or rested, she sat alone with a book, sometimes underlining passages or writing notes. Reading was her escape from the noise of fame. Those who spoke to her seriously were often stunned. One photographer later said that Marilyn became thoughtful and articulate the moment the cameras stopped. Friends confirmed that she was emotionally intelligent and painfully aware that the public underestimated her. So why didn't the world see this side of her? because Hollywood didn't allow it. In the 1950s, studios believed a woman could be beautiful or intelligent, but never both. Marilyn's dumb blonde persona sold fantasy. Intelligence threatened it. When Marilyn demanded better roles or studied acting seriously, she was labeled difficult. Wanting respect was treated as rebellion. Publicly, Marilyn Monroe was reduced to an image. Privately, she was a thinker searching for meaning. She was never pretending to be intelligent. She was pretending not to be. And that gap between who she truly was and who the world insisted she be became one of the quiet tragedies of her life. Secret number 2. Her childhood was extremely traumatic. Before the world knew her as Marilyn Monroe, before the fame, the flashbulbs, and the applause, she was a child named Norma Jean Mortensen. She was born in 1926 into a life already marked by instability. Norma Jean never truly knew her father. His identity remained uncertain, leaving an absence that followed her for the rest of her life. Her mother, Gladys Baker, struggled with severe mental illness, a condition that eventually led to her being institutionalized. And just like that, Norma Jean lost the only parent she had. With no stable home, she was moved from place to place. Foster homes, orphanages, temporary guardians. No permanence, no consistency, no sense of belonging. She learned early that homes were temporary and people disappeared. There was no one place she could point to and say, "This is where I belong." No routine, no security. Biographers describe her childhood as lonely and emotionally unsettling. Norma Jean became shy, anxious, and deeply eager to please. She learned to adapt quickly because survival depended on it. These experiences left scars, and those scars didn't fade with age. They followed her into adulthood, shaping her relationships, her fears, and her overwhelming need to be loved. Marilyn Monroe didn't crave attention because she was vain. She craved it because abandonment had taught her that love was fragile. Friends later recalled that she feared being alone. Silence unsettled her. Empty rooms made her anxious. Being left felt like reliving childhood all over again. The cruel irony is this: she grew into one of the most desired women in the world, while still carrying the heart of an unwanted child. Fame did not heal her wounds. Applause did not replace stability. Adoration did not feel like love. Instead, the trauma quietly shaped her public persona. The smile became protection. The charm became survival. The need for approval became emotional armor. Marilyn Monroe wasn't weak for needing love. She needed love because she grew up without it. And the little girl who learned too early that people disappear never stopped searching for someone who would stay. Secret number 4. Hollywood exploited her, then punished her for wanting more. Hollywood loved Marilyn Monroe, but it never respected her. From the beginning, Marilyn was treated less like a person and more like a product. The studio system controlled everything: her image, her roles, her contracts, even how she was allowed to speak in public. And for a while, she played along, because she needed to survive. Marilyn was paid far less than her male co-stars, even when her name alone guaranteed box office success. She was cast repeatedly as the same character: beautiful, innocent, unintelligent. The fantasy sold well, and the studios had no interest in changing it. But Marilyn wanted more. She wanted serious roles, fair pay, creative control. In Hollywood, that made her dangerous. When she began questioning her contracts and refusing shallow roles, the narrative changed overnight. She was no longer America's sweetheart. She became difficult, unreliable, problem. Studios threatened to replace her. They suspended her without pay. They leaked stories to the press portraying her as unstable and ungrateful, all for daring to demand respect in an industry built on obedience. The truth is, Marilyn wasn't rebelling. She was advocating. She studied acting seriously. She formed her own production company, an almost unheard-of move for a woman at the time. She wanted to prove she was more than a body on screen. But Hollywood had no mercy for women who stepped out of line. Every delay, every illness, every emotional struggle was weaponized against her. What was once called fragile became unprofessional. What was once charming became unmanageable. The system that created Marilyn Monroe turned on her the moment she tried to grow beyond it. And the pressure was relentless. She was expected to perform perfection while being denied autonomy, to smile while being underpaid, to remain grateful while being. Secret number 5, her silent battle with mental health and insomnia. Marilyn Monroe's greatest struggle wasn't with fame. It was with her own mind. Marilyn often went days without sleep. Insomnia haunted her nights, leaving her exhausted and emotionally fragile. Doctors prescribed barbiturates and sedatives, the standard treatment in the 1950s, but one that was dangerous, addictive, and poorly monitored. Instead of healing her, the medication blurred the line between rest and escape. Friends recalled that Marilyn lived in cycles, brief moments of hope followed by deep emotional crashes. She was sensitive, deeply introspective, and easily overwhelmed by pressure. Fame amplified everything. Joy felt intense. Pain felt unbearable. In public, her vulnerability was romanticized. In private, it was terrifying. Marilyn sought help, but the help available often did more harm than good. Therapy was inconsistent. Doctors treated symptoms, not causes. Emotional pain was medicated, not understood. The industry didn't slow down for her suffering. Studios expected perfection, punctuality, and endless charm, regardless of what she was going through. When she struggled to show up on set due to exhaustion or emotional distress, the label returned. Unstable, unreliable, difficult. But Marilyn wasn't careless. She was overwhelmed. Those close to her described her as emotionally raw, someone who felt everything deeply and had little protection against disappointment. She feared failure. She feared rejection. And most of all, she feared being left alone with her thoughts. The cruel paradox was this: the woman who brought joy to millions often couldn't find peace herself. Her smile became an obligation. Her image became armor. And her suffering became invisible. Marilyn Monroe didn't lose her life because she was weak. She lost it because she lived in a world that demanded beauty, silence, and strength, without offering safety, understanding, or rest. Her struggle with mental health wasn't a flaw. It was a warning, a reminder that fame does not protect you from pain, and admiration does not replace care. Secret number 6. She desperately wanted to be a mother. Marilyn Monroe didn't dream of awards or red carpets. She dreamed of having a child. Behind the fame and flashing cameras was a woman who longed for something simple and deeply human, a family of her own. For Marilyn, motherhood represented stability, love, and the home she never had growing up. But that dream was repeatedly taken from her. Marilyn suffered multiple miscarriages throughout her life. Each loss devastated her. Biographers and close friends described her grief as profound and deeply personal, something she carried quietly, away from the public eye. These weren't just medical events. They were emotional fractures. Every miscarriage reopened the wounds of her childhood. Abandonment, instability, and loss. To Marilyn, becoming a mother wasn't just about raising a child. It was about finally creating a place where love stayed. Friends recalled that after each loss, she became more withdrawn, more fragile. The pain intensified her depression and deepened her sense of failure, even though none of it was her fault. In public, she remained the symbol of desire. In private, she mourned the life she couldn't have. The tragedy was cruel. The woman celebrated for her sexuality longed most for nurturing, not admiration. She wanted bedtime stories, not spotlights, laughter in a home, not applause from strangers. Her marriages struggled under this weight. The emotional toll of loss, combined with the pressures of fame and her own fragile mental health, made stability almost impossible. Those close to her said that Marilyn believed a child would give her purpose beyond Hollywood. Someone who would love her not for her image, but for who she truly was. Norma Jean. But that future never came. Every attempt to renegotiate was met with resistance, criticism, and threats. Publicly, Marilyn Monroe was a symbol of excess. Privately, she worried about control, leverage, and survival. Secret number 8. She was famous but not financially secure. Low, restrained music fades in. To the outside world, Marilyn Monroe looked untouchable. Fame, luxury, Hollywood royalty. People assumed she was rich beyond imagination. She wasn't. Despite being one of the most recognizable stars on the planet, Marilyn Monroe was far less wealthy than people believed. Early in her career, she signed contracts that heavily favored the studios. She was paid modest salaries while her films generated millions. Marilyn didn't own her image. The studios did. While her face sold tickets, magazines, and merchandise, she had little control over how the money flowed. Male co-stars routinely earned more, even when Marilyn's presence guaranteed box office success. And her expenses were relentless. Marilyn spent heavily on therapy, doctors, and medication, trying to manage her mental health and chronic insomnia. She paid for acting classes, vocal coaches, and personal tutors, investing in self-improvement in an industry that rarely rewarded it. She also supported friends and family, often giving more than she could afford. Generosity came naturally to her, even when stability did not. Behind the scenes, financial anxiety followed her. Fame brought attention but not security. The pressure to keep working, to keep performing, to keep pleasing, never stopped. If she slowed down, the money slowed down too. This financial vulnerability trapped her. She couldn't easily walk away from toxic contracts or damaging expectations. Independence required resources she didn't fully have. And every attempt to renegotiate was met with resistance, criticism, and threats. Publicly, Marilyn Monroe was a symbol of excess. Privately, she worried about control, leverage, and survival. The irony was cruel. The woman who defined Hollywood glamour lived without the safety that glamour promised. Fame did not protect her. Beauty did not secure her future. Secret number 9. The mystery surrounding her death. Marilyn Monroe's death shocked the world. On August 5, 1962, at just 36 years old, she was found dead in her Los Angeles home. The official cause: probable suicide from a barbiturate overdose. But even today, questions linger. Why did a woman so adored, so celebrated, take her own life? Friends and family remember Marilyn as intensely lonely, battling insomnia, depression, and emotional exhaustion. Fame had given her admiration but not understanding. Her carefully constructed life in Hollywood's spotlight hid the profound pain beneath. The night of her death remains clouded in uncertainty. Some details about phone calls, visitors, and the medications she took are unclear or contradictory. Over the decades, speculation has grown, sometimes fantastical, sometimes disturbing, but what remains undeniable is this: Marilyn's death reflected a life trapped between public fantasy and private despair. The world saw beauty, charm, and laughter. What few saw was fear, fragility, and an endless search for love. Even as the world celebrated her image, the real Norma Jean felt unseen, unheard, and isolated. Conspiracy theories have persisted for decades. Rumors involving powerful figures, government secrets, or Hollywood scandals. But historians agree, these are distractions. The real story lies in the human struggle she endured daily, hidden behind the smiles, the dresses, and the flashes of cameras. Marilyn Monroe's death was not the end of her influence. It became a symbol, a reminder that fame cannot heal emotional pain, and admiration cannot replace care. That the pressures of being adored, constantly watched, and endlessly scrutinized can be unbearable, even for someone who seems to have everything. And perhaps the most tragic truth is this: the world still idolizes Marilyn Monroe for her image. Few remember the woman behind it. The woman who loved deeply, hurt silently, and gave everything to a world that wasn't just a star. She was a person who struggled, suffered, and sought connection in a world that often saw her as only a symbol. Her story reminds us that admiration is not the same as understanding. Attention is not the same as care. And fame, no matter how bright, cannot fill the void left by a heart yearning to be truly loved.